Chapter 101, God Realm Extra. In the God Realm south lay an ancient forest, vast and saturated with an age-old aura. It had stood longer than any remembered record, and now and then the roars of divine beasts echoed through its depths. Hidden within that forest were secrets of the God Realm that had long been forgotten. Atop a towering, gnarled tree whose trunk coiled like a dragon sat the goddess of life. She was fretting over how to travel to the Wuxing continent to obtain the ultimate five elements essence for her precious disciple. "Honestly, little one, you really know how to cause me trouble," she muttered. "That Achi is mysterious all the time. If he finds out I'm going to the Wuxing continent for that essence, there's no way he'll let me leave." While the goddess of life fretted, two rare visitors arrived at the tree. They had barely approached when she noticed them and smiled with a gleam in her beautiful eyes. "Oh, how could I forget you two? Little Green, open up. Little Black and I have come to see you." The voice that rang out was gentle, clear, and musical. Beneath the tree stood two god kings of the God Realm, the God of Kindness and the God of Evil. In the God Realm, the chief gods and god kings enjoyed considerable freedom, but they also bore responsibilities. The Goddess of Life, for example, had to ensure the immortal spiritual force from the World Tree kept the God Realm thriving. The God of Kindness and the God of Evil, however, technically had no duties. They spent their days idle in the God Realm core and had grown restless. To escape their boredom, they had attempted all manner of schemes to slip past the Asura god, who guarded the realm's exits. Recently, the Asura god had personally ordered the law enforcement gods to block the planar passages from the God Realm to the various lower planes. With the exits closed, the two divinities had been forced to descend secretly, and they'd come to the southern region to visit the Goddess of Life. After a short while, a stunning woman in a bright green silk dress appeared beneath the tree, smiling. The God of Evil kept his composure. He was usually reserved, but the God of Kindness, a lively female divinity, had no restraint. She flew forward in an exuberant embrace. The Goddess of Life, taken by surprise, hugged her back. Both women were breathtaking. Even the current Qian Renxue would pale beside them. Holding the God of Kindness, the Goddess of Life humored the display. The God of Kindness relished the aura of life that radiated from her host. Then, leaning in, she began to complain at length about the Asura god's strictness. The God of Evil, silent until then, hesitated and finally said, "Perhaps we should at least try to understand him. After all, he is the law enforcement god of the God Realm. But we are God Kings. He has no right to stop us." Halfway through the sentence, the God of Evil was met with a scathing glare from the God of Kindness and immediately backpedaled. The Goddess of Life had seen this exchange so many times she barely blinked. Her bright green eyes flicked to the patrol guarding the passage to the Wuxing continent, and an idea formed. "Little Green, is this really okay?" The God of Evil murmured, glancing toward the law enforcement god stationed below. For no good reason, he did not want to be chased round the heavens by a chai. Then, with the lightest push of divine force, the God of Kindness shoved him toward the planar passage. The God of Evil stumbled, bewildered. "Wasn't that Xiao Bai who just pushed me?" he blurted before he had time to think. The law enforcement god had not had a clear view of the intruders. Snarling, he raised a blood-tinted divine sword and lunged, shouting, "Intruders to the lower realm shall die." The blow carried the intent of slaughter. Though it lacked the full terror of the Asura god's own strike, it echoed the same ruthless quality. Even so, a mere second-level law enforcement god would never have dared draw steel against a god king if he realized whom he faced. The God of Evil steadied himself and, with casual menace, reached out and seized the blade with his bare hand. The law enforcement god's face went white. "Kid, don't blame me," the God of Evil said coolly. "Blame Achai. He's the one who ordered you to block this place. Go find him and reason with him when you return." With a wave of his hand, a black divine force spread, and the God of Evil used his prestige to fling the stunned law enforcement god through the planar passage. Unknown to the God of Evil, that unfortunate officer would never return to the God Realm. Those who have read The God of Wine will remember this unlucky fellow. Having cleared the way, the God of Kindness seized the moment. She pulled the Goddess of Life toward the passage. "Thank you, Little Black. Little Green and I will bring gifts when we get back." Watching the two women disappear, the god of evil shook his head with a helpless smile. He left a phantom image of himself on a hillside and then followed through the planar passage to the Wuxing continent. "I couldn't miss such an interesting trip to the lower realm," he murmured. Thus, the three highest divinities in the god realm slipped down to the lower realms, right under the Asura god's nose. When a Qi rushed to the area, he found the phantom image of the god of evil and still bowed with respect. "Greetings, God King. May I ask what urgent matter brought you to the lower realm, and why you struck down my law enforcement god?" The phantom of the god of evil wore a rare, warm smile. "A Qi, you're not the only one who's thinking of retiring." When the Asura god caught sight of the god of evil's black and white eyes, a chill ran through him. He felt exposed, as if every hidden thought had been seen through. Wondered too, Loli Shueqi's terrible idea on a snowy night. Winter passed and spring arrived. Another year had gone by in the blink of an eye. After the royal banquet, Lin Zhan, his wife, and Lin Yu were asked to remain in the palace. Lin Zhan, a little puzzled, nudged Lin Yu and, using spirit energy to thicken his voice, murmured, "You brat, did you bully Crown Prince Xuebeng again? Why did His Majesty only keep our family behind?" Lin Yu shook his head slowly and replied calmly, "How could that be? Xuebeng avoids me now. He takes a detour whenever he sees me. I haven't spoken to him in ages, let alone bullied him." Ever since Lin Yu had given Xuebeng a thorough lesson, the noble scions of Heaven Do City had all behaved themselves. Those nobles were dissipated by nature, but not idiots. With their father's spirit master strength no better than Lin Zhan's, they dared not provoke Lin Yu. The boys who had followed Xuebeng fell quiet, some even reformed entirely. Their elders came to the Lin residence to offer thanks, and the city's atmosphere improved considerably. Still, the royal family member who also served as Lord of Heaven Do City had other ideas. He actually suggested to Shuiye that Lin Yu be given an official post specifically to oversee those scions. It was clearly intended to bind Lin Yu to their side. Lin Yu didn't particularly care for titles, but he never ignored danger either. Sooner or later, Sister Shuer would find a reason to send him away to some remote post, and then, who knew what would happen on the road? After nearly 15 minutes, Shuiye arrived with Shui Qinghe. He was accompanied by eunuchs and maids and held the hand of a soft, adorable little girl. The girl had short, pale yellow hair and light blue eyes full of curiosity. She looked 7 or 8 and wore a palace dress. Seeing Lin Zhan, Shuiye laughed heartily. "Brother Lin Zhan, long time no see. I hope you're well." Lin Zhan, long accustomed to imperial intrigue, immediately put on the proper show. He bowed profoundly, face awash with feigned humility. "Lin Zhan deserves death. How dare I call myself a brother to your majesty? I am unworthy." He filled the room with exaggerated remorse. Shuiye's reaction was unreadable, but Qian Renxue, disguised as Shui Qinghe, found her opinion of Lin Zhan shifting slightly. After a round of formal pleasantries, Shuiye signaled for the group to sit. They had already drunk freely at the banquet, so they were offered tea instead of more wine. Shuiye praised Lin Yu lavishly as a genius, and Shui Qinghe, who was there with the little princess Shui Ke, felt something strange, though she couldn't immediately place it. The truth came out soon enough. Smiling casually, Shuiye said to Lin Zhan, "Though we are lord and vassal, we are also brothers. For the sake of harmony, I intend to bind our houses more closely. I plan to betroth my youngest daughter, Shui Ke, to Lin Yu. What do you think?" Shui Qinghe almost dropped her teacup. Warm tea nearly spilled onto Shui Ke's pale yellow dress. A hot anger flared inside her. She felt as if she could tear Shuiye to pieces. Her attachment to Lin Yu was never mere affection. It leaned toward possessiveness. She wasn't angry at a little girl like Shui Ke, but Shuiye's proposal made her want to kill him on the spot. Shui Ke, sitting beside her, heard the words and flushed crimson, her face like a ripe apple. Shyness overtook her. She fiddled with the tableware and accidentally knocked a delicate silver plate to the floor. The crash snapped her back to herself. "I'm sorry, father," she whispered. Care was distracted. "It's all right, Care. Just be more careful." "Qinghe, take good care of Care," Shuiye replied, indulgent. He was strict with Shui Qinghe, but doting toward his daughter. That doting, however, came at a cost. If the royal family needed it, Shui Ke would be used for political stability through engagement, marriage, or other alliances. Shui Ye's intention to bind Lin Yu to the court by offering Shui Ke in marriage was a deliberate move to secure Lin Yu's loyalty. He had no idea his plan would become the very poison that hastened his downfall. Both Qian Renxue and Lin Yu quietly took note. Lin Yu knew his sister Sure well. Though she was gentle and indulged his shy impulses in private, she was possessive and would not tolerate another woman near him. Moreover, Lin Yu had no strange fondness for little girls like Tang Chen. He preferred gentle, intellectual older sisters. Tea choked Lin Yu mid-sip. He set the cup down and answered quickly, "Your Majesty, I'm in the prime of my cultivation. It isn't suitable to marry so early. Besides, Princess Care and I are far too young and too far apart in age. It would be inappropriate." Shui Ye smiled and nodded as if this had been expected. "Of course, I would never delay a genius's cultivation. I only wanted to set an engagement in advance. When Care comes of age, we can hold the wedding." Everything played right into Shui Ye's plan. He had anticipated resistance and prepared his words. He didn't want the Heaven Do Empire's future to slip from his family's hands, and he had been making contingency plans. Lin Zhan, who already suspected the truth about Lin Yu and Qian Renxue, cursed Shui Ye silently but stepped forward with a respectful bow. "I beg your Majesty to postpone your command." At Lin Zhan's words, Shui Ye's demeanor shifted. A hint of displeasure creased his face. "Minister Lin, what do you mean? Are you suggesting you look down on Care becoming your Lin family's daughter-in-law?" "Your Majesty," Lin Zhan replied smoothly, "Lin Zhan would be honored to welcome a princess of the royal house into my family. But I beg you to wait a little longer. In 6 years, when my son has led the royal fighting team to victory in the Spirit Hall and brings the championship back, won't that be the perfect time to formalize the engagement? There would be nationwide celebration. It would be a greater blessing for both houses." 40 years of courtcraft had made Lin Zhan a master of timing and flattery. Shui Qinghei's eyes flashed with surprise as she noticed Lin Zhan's maneuvering. She silently considered how to reward him later. After all, a man's friends and allies mattered. Chapter 103, The Heavenly Strike Will Depart, but Snow Star is helpless. Shui Ye was in a good mood. The thought of one day taking the championship from Spirit Hall filled him with both fear and exhilaration. The Heaven Do Empire had almost never won the Advanced Elite Spirit Master Academy tournament across the continent. In recent years, the champions had almost always come from Spirit Hall. If the Heaven Do Empire could claim victory, even once, it would be a tremendous boost to their prestige. And Shui Ke was only 7 now. Young, yes, but in 6 years the timing would be perfect. Good. Brother Lin Zhan's proposal is sensible. As he suggested, we will hold the engagement ceremony 6 years from now, after the Advanced Elite Spirit Master Academy tournament. At that time, the Heaven Do Empire will celebrate 2 joyous events and grant a general amnesty to the realm. Long live the Emperor! Everyone present shouted in unison. Whether Shui Ye truly deserved the praise was another matter, but the hall was swept up in celebration. After a period of harmony and good cheer, the Lin family, 3 in number, stood to leave under Lin Zhan's lead. Just as they reached the palace gates, a familiar figure blocked their way. Snake Lance, now officially the head steward of the Crown Prince's Eastern Palace. Lin Zhan was startled when he saw him, but quickly put on a respectful smile. "So it's Steward Yu. May I ask the reason for your visit?" he asked. Serpent Dragon's face remained impassive. "I come on behalf of His Highness the Crown Prince. She asks that young Master Lin accompany me to the Eastern Palace." "Very well then. Go with Steward Yu immediately. Don't delay." Lin Zhan had known Shui Qinghei's true identity for some time and said little. Before she was formally married in, she remained the young lord. Yu Ru, Lin Zhan's wife, a noblewoman who carried herself with composure, was confused, but Lin Yu quietly bid her farewell and was led away by Serpent Dragon. As they drew near the Crown Prince's bedchamber, Serpent Dragon spoke quietly into Lin Yu's ear. "Kid, the young lord doesn't seem herself. Be careful." Lin Yu felt a flicker of surprise at the warning, but did not appear overly concerned. He had some inkling that Shui Ye's latest scheme might leave Shui Qinghei unsettled. When Serpent Dragon left, Lin Yu pushed open the chamber door. Finding no one inside, He immediately activated his second spirit ability, paired Luan, and created two spirit clones, one of Shui Qinghe and one of himself. Satisfied, he slipped into the Eastern Palace's concealed chamber. The secret chamber's mechanism opened and a golden figure sprang toward him. Lin Yu opened his arms and caught her easily. The woman's soft waist, small enough to be encompassed in his hands, settled against him. Feeling her warmth, Lin Yu's expression softened. He patted her back and murmured, "You left in such a hurry, I thought you were life Qi." Qian Renxue's head was buried against his shoulder. She blinked her brilliant, golden eyes and let out a soft huff. "How could that be? I'm not some old life Qi." Slowly, Qian Renxue's anger cooled. She looked up at Lin Yu, smoothing his clothes with restless, delicate hands. "I already told Shui Ye about the noble council plan you mentioned. He's wavering and has called in Shui Xing. Shui Xing saw through it immediately and opposed it. Things are a little messy now. Xiao Yu, can you help me?" A mist clouded her golden eyes as she gripped Lin Yu's sleeve. He was taken aback. He had never seen the formidable Shuier act so spoiled. The effect was disarming, and Lin Yu felt his resolve shift. Qian Renxue noticed and let a small, pleased smile play at her lips. Though she sometimes regretted having promised herself to Lin Yu, she no longer felt the sting of that decision. She knew he would attract outstanding women wherever he went. The once dominant Qian Renxue had been trying to change, softening into something more ordinary, more attentive to his wishes. Lin Yu could not resist her pleading demeanor. "All right, Sister Shuier, tell the nobles about the plan for a noble council. Once those nobles are alerted, they'll throw their full influence behind it." He spoke in a low, steady voice. "The situation in the Heaven Dew Empire is like this. The upper three sects won't make any drastic moves, so in critical moments it falls to the nobles. They may be weaker individually, but their combined influence is something even the imperial family must reckon with. Use this to your advantage. Gradually push Shuiye to the side and seize real power from the throne. Once Shuiye has no real authority, it will be time to send the Shui family packing." Qian Renxue wrapped her arms around Lin Yu's waist and smiled. "You're ruthless. I like it. You'll be leaving in a few days. Nothing unexpected will happen to you there, but don't go today. Stay with me a while longer, will you?" "My pleasure," Lin Yu replied. They spent the night in the secret chamber. Fully clothed, the lights dimmed around them. Not far from the Eastern Palace, in Shui Xing's opulent princely manor, Shui Xing and his nephew Shui Beng were speaking about the proposed noble council. Shui Beng trembled, his words coming out in quick, startled bursts. "No, absolutely not. We can't let him succeed. If the nobles rally behind that plan, the empire will be lost to him." "We may not be able to stop it outright," Shui Xing said calmly. "We'll have to use this time to win people over." "No, he'll kill me if I try," Shui Beng blurted, shaking his head emphatically. "I can't do it." Shui Xing watched his nephew with a tight breath, then sighed. "I understand. Leave this to me, Imperial Uncle. You're still young. You should not be involved in such matters." He would handle it himself. Chapter 104, Preparations Before Departure, Bloodwine Tavern. As Shui Xing had expected, no matter how hard he tried to stop him, he could not hold back Shui Qinghe. Days passed quickly. Qian Renxue, following Lin Yu's instructions, quietly mobilized her subordinates and even leveraged the Spirit Hall's influence in Heavendoe City to build momentum for the Noble Council. The nobles in the city began to grow restless, especially the dukes and the marquises just beneath them. Aside from the royal family, they were the most privileged in the Heavendoe Empire, and advancement within their ranks was almost impossible. The prospect of the Noble Council, however, gave them a sliver of hope. The nobles were no fools. Even before the Noble Council had fully formed, they realized the slots would be limited. Under the deliberate or unintentional machinations of some, long-standing grudges flared into open hostility. Seeing Heavendew City, and perhaps the entire empire, threatening to descend into chaos as families vied for power, Shuiye finally yielded. "The Noble Council can be established," he declared. "It will be led by the Crown Prince and assisted by Shui Xing. Qinghe, don't disappoint me." Down in the court, after making his decision, Shuiye gave the elegantly composed Shui Qinghe a meaningful look, his heart heavy with unease. "I obey the decree. Your son will not fail everyone's expectations." As Shi Qinghe accepted the order with a composed smile, a quiet satisfaction swelled inside him. I followed your plan, and it worked. When will you return? Thousands of miles from Heaven Do City, Lin Yu walked alone through an unnamed forest, stepping on the familiar blue-silver grass of the Douluo Continent. Slung over his shoulder was the tail of a 10,000-year thundercloud tiger. The beast was enormous. There was no other way to carry it but by its tail. He reached a dry, roomy cave, and with a few deft jabs from his blade to the tiger's head, limbs, and spine, tried to finish it off cleanly, but luck did not favor him. He set to work skinning the carcass and salvaging all the edible parts. He was heading to Slaughter City next. In the original timeline, that place had been tampered with, and it was notoriously dangerous. A place a wise person would avoid if they could. Lin Yu had the legacy of the life deity and his master sister's support, but there was no guarantee the Asura god would be lenient. To secure 100 wins, there he would have to stay a long time, and he wouldn't trust the food or drink inside the city. That meant he needed to prepare provisions. The Thundercloud Tiger was the 7th major spirit beast he had felled for that purpose. When he finished carving the tiger down to a clean, gleaming skeleton, the ghost leopard who had been following him stepped out. "Young master, are you really going to enter Slaughter City?" Lin Yu had lit a bonfire and was skewering strips of meat on prepared sticks, turning them slowly over the flames. He handed a strip to the leopard and replied casually, "Of course. Qinming won't last long once he goes in, but he's my enemy. I want to see the corpse with my own eyes." Ghost Leopard had seen more of the Douluo Continent's ways than most spirit beasts, but Lin Yu's answer was shaped by more than instinct. In his previous life, he had read novels. When people preach, "Don't bully the weak," the most reliable solution is to make sure your opponents are gone for good. And to those who hide behind crowds, sometimes it's necessary to cut off every escape. Lin Yu wasn't paranoid. He had no fear of certain people like Tang and his blue-silver binding, but when dealing with unpredictable forces, such as the Asura god, caution paid. Seeing Lin Yu's resolve, Ghost Leopard had no further objections and thought, "I can only wait. If he needs rescuing, I'll find the high priest." The meat strips crisped to a golden brown. Lin Yu gave one to Ghost Leopard and ate the next with relish. When both were sated, they left the forest together. As they neared a desolate little town, Ghost Leopard warned once more, "Young master, it's still not too late to turn back. Think of the young miss, if—" "She knows," Lin Yu interrupted. "If she hadn't agreed, I wouldn't be coming. We're already here. It'll take a long time before I come back. If you don't want to wait, you can return to Heaven Do City." Ghost Leopard sighed and shook his head. "No, I'll wait for you here." Since the leopard refused to leave, Lin Yu didn't press the matter. He headed into the town, where the faint scent of blood hit him even at 100 meters out. "Is this really Slaughter City?" he muttered. Even the perimeter meant to deceive outsiders smells of blood. Once inside, the atmosphere turned sour and heavy. Lin Yu had killed enough people to read the signs. These were not common bandits. Bandits usually avoided killing where possible. These inhabitants were desperados who hunted blood. He could feel the predatory gazes on him from several of the townsfolk, but he ignored them. After searching, he found the Blood Wine Tavern, which contained the secret passage to Slaughter City. Stepping inside felt like walking into a coffin. The decor was all black, the air thick and damp despite the daylight outside. Cold and darkness seemed to eat the light. About half the seats were occupied, and most patrons sat in a low fog of silence. When Lin Yu entered, a blaze of naked bloodlust flashed in many eyes. They saw a lone, apparently defenseless youth and assumed an easy kill. Lin Yu struck first. He cast the sword domain, and the minds of everyone inside, save for the bartender in overalls whom he had deliberately spared, were crushed under its pressure. Sword intent surged outward like a torrent. From the domain came countless invisible blades that sliced through the tavern in an instant, killing over a dozen people without Lin Yu moving a muscle. The bartender, seized by terror, trembled and served a cup of dark red liquid. It gave off a sharp, metallic scent, as unmistakably bloody as fresh blood. Chapter 15. Line up. Welcome the Godchild. When the bartender still had the nerve to bring out another Bloody Mary, Lin Yu arched an eyebrow and without ceremony laid the Qing sword across his throat. "Brother," he asked lightly, "what do you mean by this?" "Sir, the rules, they're like this. I can't change them," the man stammered, the cold of the blade sobering him instantly. He gritted his teeth and clung to the rules he'd invoked, but Lin Yu had no patience for games. With a gentle slide of the frosty blade, the bartender's life was gone. Lin Yu infused spirit power into the sword, flicked away the blood droplets, and stepped into the pitch-black passage at the back of the bar. He walked slowly. In the original timeline, Tang Chen had counted steps and met the terrifying knight guarding Slaughter City on the 1,462nd step. It wasn't exact science, but by the time Lin Yu reached roughly the 1,500th step, he felt a surge of power. Hoofbeats sounded in the dark, then dim lights along the walls blinked on. Ahead, a heavily armored knight rode a tall warhorse, lance in hand, wearing a frog-shaped helmet, clearly the terrifying knight of Slaughter City, though whether this was the one called Scott, he couldn't tell at a glance. Beside him stood a black-skirted girl. Tall, stunning, barely 17 or 18, her expression cool and indifferent. Lin Yu found himself focusing on her even more than on the knight. Was she Slaughter City's enforcer? He braced for hostility, but both the knight and the black-skirted girl bowed deeply. "Greetings, Sir Godchild," they said in perfect, reverent unison. Lin Yu almost threw his back out from surprise. One moment they'd been strangers he might have had to fight, the next they were groveling. "What's going on? How do you know who I am?" he demanded. The difference in status froze the black-skirted girl into submission. "Reporting to Sir Godchild," she began, "the Slaughter King issued a decree ordering Scott and me to welcome Sir Godchild. And the only being who could command the Slaughter King is the most magnificent divinity, Lord Asura God, Asu." At the name Asura God, Lin Yu watched the frog-helmeted knight's unreadable face, but the black-skirted girl's expression had gone soft with devotion. There was a flash of blood-red fervor in her eyes that told him everything. Before she could finish, Lin Yu cut in. "Wait, you say Asura God is the greatest divinity in this world? Where does that leave my master, the goddess of life?" The black-skirted girl froze. Some things could not be spoken casually. Divinities were not to be insulted. The knight was likewise thrown. "This," she faltered, unsure how to answer. Lin Yu could see he had struck a delicate nerve. A muffled voice, impossible to place as male or female, sounded from deeper within the passage, interrupting the moment. "Enough. Divinities are not for us to debate. Both of you, kowtow and apologize to Sir Godchild." Relief washed over the pair. They prostrated themselves and apologized to Lin Yu. Farther back, in a throne room of mottled black stone steeped in a bloody aura, a figure in shadow on the throne stirred. It was the dominator of Slaughter City, the Slaughter King. When he opened his eyes, he looked pained, muttering in a complicated, weary tone, "This is truly a huge hassle. Someone." Asura God felt the same irritation. He was currently guarding the God Realm core on behalf of the God of Evil and the God of Kindness. His legacy site was under his control, and rumors about it being polluted by Rakshasa God were laughable. If Rakshasa God were still in the God Realm, it would never dare provoke Asura God. That the story spread around Slaughter City was a mystery, but Lin Yu's approach had become a major inconvenience. He and the other four divinities had been born in the God Realm, and despite their bickering, none wanted to truly offend a companion. Besides, Asura God's strength compared to the newcomers was not infinite. He didn't want a mess on his hands. With a sigh, he issued a succinct decree. "Forget it. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve. Dark gold nine-headed bat. Slaughter City's rules do not bind him. Let him do as he pleases. Do not interfere." The dark gold nine-headed bat, which had been acting through Tang Chen's body during a previous test and had caused trouble then, received the divine command and bowed respectfully. "As you command, Lord Asura God," it replied. Always cautious, the bat had been rattled by its earlier sabotage of Tang Chen's God test. Tang Chen was merely a legacy recipient then, so the bat's actions had been of little consequence among the divinities. But Lin Yu was different. The goddess of life was willing to take him as a disciple, which implied passing on her mantle. The bat understood the stakes and obeyed without hesitation. It spoke loudly to the guardians of Slaughter City, now acting in the Slaughter King's stead. Everyone listen, line up and welcome the Godchild. Those who ran Slaughter City heard the order and moved at once, no one daring to hesitate. Lin Yu was led by the black-skirted girl and the frog-helmeted knight deeper into the city. The smell of blood hit him immediately, but having killed both people and spirit beasts himself, the scent did not faze him. It was merely stronger here. At the outer city gate, a great assembly awaited. The Slaughter King himself, along with 4 titled Douluo and every responsible member of Slaughter City, bowed in unison. With voices full of deference, they intoned, "Greetings, Your Highness. Slaughter City welcomes the arrival of His Highness the Godchild." The scene lodged in Lin Yu's mind with a weird familiarity. He couldn't help thinking that, in some version of events, he had seen a welcome like this before. Chapter 106, Julan, meeting Qinming again. By evening, under the Slaughter King's enthusiastic reception and the formalities of Slaughter City's officers, Lin Yu had moved into the city lord's mansion in the inner city. The Slaughter King and his personal experts vacated the place to make room for him. The 4 titled Douluo, the only ones in Slaughter City, were posted around the mansion by order of the Slaughter King, authorized to kill anyone who dared approach without permission. That night, after a careful inspection of his new quarters, Lin Yu opened a window. A faint breeze carrying the metallic tang of blood slipped in, and he frowned. He could tolerate it, but he didn't like it. Since arriving and receiving such extraordinary treatment, Lin Yu had formed one clear impression. The Asura god seemed to have had firm control over Slaughter City from the start. It seemed unlikely the Rakshasa god had simply taken advantage of the situation. Between the Asura god, the sea god of Sea God Island, and the tangled alliances in the god realm, Lin Yu felt the whole affair was thick with schemes. The thought of centuries-old immortals plotting and manipulating gave him a headache. He decided to put it aside for now, planning to tour the city the next day. He lay down and soon fell into a deep sleep. With 4 titled Douluo guarding the mansion, not even a mosquito could have intruded, and his rest was undisturbed. When he was finally up and washed, the enforcer in a black dress, known about the city as the black-skirted girl, was already waiting outside his door with a meal box. Lin Yu stepped out. She bowed to him and was about to offer the food when he stopped her. "Take it back," he said. "I don't have much of an appetite lately." "Yes, son of God," she replied, a brief flash of resentment in her eyes before she turned and left. A short while later, she returned. Her cold, exquisite face was wreathed in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, which made Lin Yu curious. "Why are you back?" he asked. "Reporting to the Son of God," she answered. "By order of the Slaughter King, I am to serve the Son of God for as long as he remains in Slaughter City." Lin Yu had just taken a sip of water and, startled, spat it out. The enforcer's cultivation was high enough to let her evade the spray. Quickly recovering, Lin Yu offered a graceless excuse. "Sorry, I choked on my water." The woman in black, clearly perplexed, studied him. She had the impression this son of God was hiding something, though she had no proof. Lin Yu wiped the corner of his mouth and changed the subject smoothly. "I don't even know your name," he said. "You're a very beautiful woman. I can't keep calling you enforcer." The distraction worked. She hesitated then, with a hint of embarrassment, said, "Ah, son of God, you may call me Julan." Lin Yu smiled. "All right, Julan, I don't need someone to serve me. Would you? How about you accompany me for a walk around Slaughter City?" The Slaughter King had already ordered her to satisfy all of Lin Yu's requests, reasonable or not, and Julan had braced herself for anything. When his only request was a simple tour, she agreed instantly. Inwardly, she had a flutter of hope. Maybe this son of God would make unreasonable demands, and she could use the opportunity to escape the slaughter around her. But her hopes were likely idle. Lin Yu barely thought about women while carrying heavier burdens back home. He wouldn't be interested in her in that way. They left the mansion and strolled through the inner city under Julan's guidance. Unlike the desperate lower tiers of the outer city, residents of the inner ring generally had some strength and didn't have to pay their Bloody Mary tribute in fear. When they saw Julan respectfully shadowing Lin Yu, the onlookers grew uneasy. They didn't know who he was, but they understood he wasn't a man they could afford to provoke. One after another, they lowered their heads as he passed. They walked a long time, the air thick with silent dread from the bystanders. About halfway through the inner city, Julan noticed Lin Yu's subtle, searching movements and cleared her throat softly. "Son of God, is there anything Julan can do for you?" Her gentle question made several passers-by stumble inwardly. The cold-faced slaughter demoness, so feared, was speaking with such deference to this young man. Who could he be? They shifted away from his path even faster, terrified of attracting notice. Lin Yu paid no attention to them. He was focused on Julan. As the city's enforcer, she knew its people and its movements intimately. "Julan," he asked quietly, "in the past 6 months, have you encountered a red-haired young man in his 20s named Qin Ming?" She blinked. Names weren't always reliable in a place like Slaughter City. People changed names, were mocked into nicknames, or died before their names mattered. "I'm sorry, son of God. Numbers I might remember, but names? Not always. But if he arrived last year and is still alive now, he should be fighting to the death in the slaughter arena these 2 days." The slaughter arena stood in the heart of the inner city, a massive structure that resembled a Roman colosseum. Before long, they came to it. From the highest platform, Lin Yu looked down into the arena as the matches were about to begin. Among the dense crowd and the ragged fighters, one figure caught his eye, a red-haired young man whose right leg limped, dressed in tattered clothes, face gaunt. He had fallen far from the pride he'd displayed at Heaven Do Royal Academy, but Lin Yu recognized him immediately. Qin Ming, who had fled during the internal strife of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect. Chapter 107. Look at the background. Plain clothes remain untainted by blood. Having spent her life in a place like Slaughter City, Julan had long learned to read people. When Lin Yu's gaze landed on Qin Ming among the hundreds waiting to enter the slaughter arena, she hesitated a moment and leaned in to whisper. "Reporting to Young Master Divinity, this group entered last year and have survived up to now. I can summon them here, if you like." "No," Lin Yu said. "Just arrange for me to enter the arena with those 100 people." Julan grew nervous. Lin Yu's status was exceptionally honorable. If anything happened to him in the arena, how could she explain it to the Slaughter King or to her superior, the Asura god? Lin Yu only smiled at her concern. "What, you think I can't handle a few desperate fugitives?" She waved her hands anxiously. "Of course not. I'm just worried you might get hurt." "If I could be hurt by them," Lin Yu replied calmly, "wouldn't that be a shame upon my master?" Julan's face fell as she realized the truth. He was a direct disciple of a divinity, not someone ordinary fugitives could match. She fell silent and gave the orders. The 100-person slaughter in the arena was already nearing its end. Those who survived this long were almost all skilled. At least half were spirit masters, the rest well-built ordinary fighters. But the ordinary survivors were exhausted, drained of fight. What followed was a one-sided massacre. The ordinary men could do nothing against the spirit masters and soon lay in pools of blood. When only spirit masters remained, the battle resumed between them. Spirit masters of the attack system had the advantage when their spirit abilities were not in play. A tall, bear-like spirit master with a thick hide and the last of his spirit power smashed his final opponent's skull and won the right to live on in Slaughter City. Exhausted, he could not even leave the arena. An imposing knight of order skewered him to the ground and dragged him away with the other dead. Lin Yu watched with an expression like an ancient well. Then he asked suddenly, "Julan, there's something I don't understand. Can you answer me?" Julan paused, then offered a crisp salute. If young Master Divinity has questions, Julan will tell him everything she knows. It's said that 6 slaughter gods have appeared in Slaughter City over the last 1,000 years. 3 should still be alive now. Excluding the one whose whereabouts are unknown, the other 2 are Supreme Pontiff Bibi Dong of Spirit Hall in the outside world and Clear Sky Douluo Tang Hao, who is related by blood to the missing slaughter god. Lin Yu's tone was even, but the words piqued Julan's curiosity. "Who is the missing slaughter god?" she asked. "And from what you say, is the missing one also from the Clear Sky sect?" "You don't need to know," Lin Yu said. He shifted the subject, asking instead, if someone comes to Slaughter City to improve without any powerful backing, can they leave safely without going through the Hell Road? No, Julan answered without hesitation. Except for the utterly desperate, Slaughter City isn't a place for anyone without protection. Even people from Spirit Hall must pay if they want to leave unharmed. Lin Yu was not surprised. Slaughter City existed by human hands and human bargains. Background made all the difference, even in the face of death. That was part of why the Asura god left a divinity's legacy here. The Hell Road, something no ordinary power could touch. What Lin Yu couldn't quite understand was why the Asura god permitted the Rakshasa god's power to enter this territory. Before he could think further, another slaughter ended. Qin Ming, limping and wounded, was about to enter the arena. Lin Yu let his musings go and descended into the ring. Unlike everyone else, Lin Yu was protected by the divine seal and not bound by Slaughter City's usual rules. He could use his spirit abilities. His landing stunned the crowd. They had seen how Julan respected him and knew his identity could not be simple. Angering him might be their last mistake. Lin Yu ignored their fear. "I'll give you all a chance," he announced. "Whoever can injure me will be exempt from 100 years of matches in the slaughter arena." Julan's face turned cold as she added, "Don't miss this opportunity." Chaos erupted. The 100 people, including Qin Ming, charged. A cold light flashed in Lin Yu's eyes as he activated his intangible sword domain. Some of the weaker fugitives died instantly. The rest were suppressed, worn down by the little world within his domain. A wisp of azure light wrapped around the sword that appeared in Lin Yu's hand, his personal blade, Qing Shuang. With a sharp chime, he moved with 5 elements Bagua footwork and burst forward in a streak of cold light. In a single breath, half the people in the arena fell beneath his blade. Julan, who had seen countless killings as an enforcer in Slaughter City, was utterly shocked. She had never seen anyone kill like this. The sword struck, the person fell, yet there was no spatter of blood. Lin Yu's plain clothes remained completely unstained. In Slaughter City, everything depends on background. Chapter 108, Destroying Qin Ming. The Asura god wants to descend to the mortal realm. A single sword strike severed his head. The crowd in the Hellslaughter arena went numb. Those below who had been crying and lamenting their missed chance to flee suddenly felt relieved. Lucky it wasn't them. Lin Yu's sword, however, filled the arena with a fresh, cold terror. 2 cowards collapsed dead from sheer fright. That hardly mattered. In Lin Yu's hand, the long blade took life after life. With each sweep, at least one person fell. In the span of 2 breaths, only Qin Ming remained from the group originally forced into that arena. The blade of the Qing Shuang sword shone like frost and snow. Even with Lin Yu holding back half his strength, after slaying 99 people, there was no trace of blood on the steel. He walked toward the fallen Qin Ming with slow, steady steps. Qin Ming's eyes were bloodshot. He tried to crawl back, but his crippled right leg betrayed him, and he collapsed into a pool of his own blood. Naked and filthy, he looked utterly ruined. When his eyes found Lin Yu, fear filled him, and he kept repeating, "No, no, please, spare me." Lin Yu stopped and a smile crossed his face. "Oh, I didn't recognize you at first. Isn't this teacher Qin Ming? How come you're here? And this appearance, it hardly fits your temperament." Qin Ming froze, then flung himself to his knees and began kowtowing, pounding his head on the ground as if begging for his life could be bought cheap. "Lin Yu, I was wrong. I deserved to die. I was greedy. Please, spare me." "Spare you? You think that's possible?" Lin Yu's Qing Shuang sword pressed against his shoulder. The chill at his neck made Qin Ming stop kowtowing. Resentment flared in his haggard eyes. "If it weren't for you," he rasped, "I wouldn't have ended up like this. It's all your fault." Lin Yu nodded slowly. "Yes, I had a hand in it. But it's not all me. You dug your own hole. You're not powerful. You had no backing. You could have behaved and lived a comfortable life. I intended to teach you a lesson and spare you. If you'd kept your head down at Shrek Academy, a monthly pay of 600 gold would have made you comfortable. But you were arrogant. You offended people. Do you still not understand what happened to your leg? You asked for trouble. Then you ran to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sect and had Ningfengji send people to attack me. If I didn't kill you, would that be fair?" Hearing that, horror washed over Qin Ming's face. He had always thought Lin Yu was merely a lackey of Shui Qinghe, that Shui Qinghe was a reckless princeling and the real force. Now he realized he'd been the fool. Lin Yu killing him. That was exactly the sort of thing he should have expected. He croaked, "My mistakes, I'll bear them, but please, don't involve my alma mater, Shrek Academy. I'll consider it. Now be gone." Lin Yu's voice was calm. Before Qinming had time to plead further, his head dropped. The arena fell silent. With Qinming dead, Lin Yu felt a small weight lift off him. Under the gaze of countless spectators, some desperate and injured, some with blood on their blades, Lin Yu, godlike and terrible a moment before, turned and walked away. Julan, who had waited nearby, fell to his knees and bowed low. "Godchild is unparalleled. That I ever doubted you was a crime." Lin Yu had heard such flattery all day. He waved his hand and left the arena. News of his power traveled fast. Someone sent a report to the Slaughter King, the dark gold nine-headed bat. Hearing of what Lin Yu had done, the bat muttered in awe, "Is this the power of a divinity's direct disciple? Even the top genius spirit masters on the Douluo Continent aren't in the same league." Far above the mortal realm, in the God Realm core, the Asura god had been watching Lin Yu's every move in Slaughter City. He sighed. "What a promising seedling. Such a pity he never met me sooner." He hesitated, then added, "Still, I should thank him. I always believed the perfection of sword intent was the ultimate barrier in the Tao of the sword, impossible to break. But he proved it can be broken. It's just extremely difficult." From a short distance, the god of destruction in a purple robe scoffed. "Heh! You've lived so long without breaking the sword intent perfection barrier? In the lower realm, they'd say you wasted your life." The Asura god drew back, unused to being mocked. Around them, the god of evil and the god of kindness weren't paying attention, and the goddess of life had temporarily left the god realm for some reason. Only the god of destruction dared openly argue with the Asura god, and the two of them were among the law enforcement gods. Despite their positions, the gods could still spar. The Asura god swallowed his pride and made his request. "Let him come to the god realm." The god of destruction snorted. "You'd be breaking the very laws you enforce." The Asura god considered, then countered, "Then we can descend to the lower realm ourselves." The god of destruction was speechless for a moment. "So we break the law in a different way. Brilliant." He'd known the Asura god a long time. Taciturn and single-minded, he didn't like wasting time. "Enough. Say what you want." "I want to learn from him," the Asura god said plainly. "I want to learn how to break through the barrier of sword intent perfection." The god of destruction stared. They all could use the god realm core to watch past spatial temporal scenes of the lower realm, but the Asura god was not one for subtleties. If he wanted knowledge, he would ask for it outright. A moment later, the god of destruction softened, more amused than annoyed. It was not unheard of for a divinity to act boldly. The real question was whether the Asura god would actually give up anything for it. Chapter 109, 100 Battles of Slaughter, Asura's Gift. At night, the Hell Slaughter Arena lay silent and empty. Without the daytime clamor of fighting and wailing, the coppery scent of blood in the arena seemed even stronger. The vast building held no one but the Slaughter King, seated on his blood-red throne with his eyes closed in meditation. When he opened them, he answered inwardly, "Yes, this subordinate understands, Lord Asura God." As Slaughter King, he was little more than the Asura God's proxy in Slaughter City on Douluo Star. If the Asura God issued orders, he would carry them out to the utmost. Sitting on the throne, his blood-red eyes swept across the deserted arena and could not help recalling how crowded it had been earlier. Early the next morning, after a quick wash, Lin Yu packed his things. Qinming was dead and matters had been clarified. There was no reason to stay. Before he'd even left the city lord's mansion, Julan, who had been shadowing him for 2 days, appeared. The black-skirted woman had an excellent figure. She was, by many accounts, the most beautiful woman on Douluo. Lin Yu simply ignored her. "Don't argue with me. Guyuena isn't human." Julan, skilled at reading expressions in Slaughter City, registered a flicker of disappointment on his face, but kept an immaculate, radiant smile. "Good morning, Lord Godchild." I intended to bid you farewell in person, but it seems there's no need." Julan's surprise was brief. Remembering the Slaughter King's command, she brightened into an even more charming smile. "Lord Godchild, the farewell may have to wait. I came to tell you the Slaughter King has summoned you." The summons caught Lin Yu off guard, but he complied. Led by Zhu Lan, he left the city lord's mansion and walked straight to the Hell Slaughter Arena. The throne that normally belonged to the Slaughter King stood empty. The Slaughter King himself, usually imposing and kingly, hovered humbly at the right of it. He bowed to Lin Yu with exaggerated respect, the humility of a servant, and said, "Greetings, godchild. This invitation comes from Lord Asura God. I beg your forgiveness for the summons." Hearing that it was the Asura God's will, Lin Yu's expression tightened. "Since it is Lord Asura God's decree, may I ask what he intends?" "Of course, Lord Asura God has decreed you the right to 100 consecutive victories in the slaughter arena. Though these victories will not win you the title of God of Slaughter through the road to hell, you will be granted the title of God of Slaughter and some portion of Slaughter City's administrative authority. And Lord Asura God said he will personally deliver your true reward." Lin Yu frowned. The Asura God clearly knew who he was, but what was his purpose? Treasure? A meeting? "May I have time to think?" The Slaughter King smiled, gentle but unnervingly eager. "Certainly. Lord Asura God said this offer stands until you ascend to the God realm." Lin Yu had been unsure, but he understood now. The Asura God was intent on meeting him. Even if he couldn't fathom the Asura God's motive, he would not be presumptuous in front of his master's sister, the goddess of life. "Very well, I accept. Please make whatever arrangements for the slaughter arena." "As you wish." Under the Slaughter King's orders, the arena's operations changed for the next 100 days. Nearly 100 people would be matched against Lin Yu each day, people who, by design, would die beneath his sword. Today was the first. When Lin Yu leapt from the high platform into the arena, the 100 assembled below were struck by shock and terror. Being in the inner city, rumors had reached them that a great power might be unleashed that day, but none had expected to be the one sacrificed. Not all were cowed. 10 to 20 spirit masters of considerable might still charged. These were veterans of Slaughter City, men and women who had survived at least a year there and knew its rules instinctively. Fear was weakness, and in Slaughter City, blood and slaughter were law. To hesitate was to invite certain death. Lin Yu felt no sympathy for the dying. The spectral wings behind him faded. His hand glowed green as he drew his treasured sword, Clear Frost. Facing the attackers, he gave a casual horizontal slash. A cold light streaked out. Lin Yu vanished from his original spot and reappeared with the sword's arc. The 10 to 20 who had rushed him, those desperate for a sliver of hope, were gone in an instant. It was a slaughter, as the arena's rules required. The remaining fighters were only fodder for sharpening Lin Yu's blade and his skills. These 100 kills were, in truth, the Asura God's gift. For swordsmen, blood was nourishment. Slaughter was the fastest way to grow. Only here could Lin Yu unleash himself completely. All of it was observed in the God Realm core, where the Asura God and the God of Destruction sat drinking tea. The God of Destruction admired the spectacle, eager to ask his wife how she had found such a potent disciple. The Asura God, hood drawn and expression hidden, clenched his hands until his knuckles cracked and roared inwardly, "He's mine! He should have been mine!" Their odd behavior drew the attention of a young man in expensive clothes who had come to the God Realm seeking refuge. He shivered at the sight. "I say, two seniors, aren't you watching the Goddess of Life's disciple? Is that the way for you to behave?" Startled from their daze, the God of Destruction and the Asura God shot him glares. "Heh, you can't even keep your own household in order. What business is it of yours?" New to the God Realm and reprimanded by two elders, the youth fell silent. Secretly, though, he recorded the two gods' actions in his mind, intending to report them to the God of Evil later, and to accuse them of misusing the God test on the lower realm. 1 match a day for 100 days, a little over 3 months. In that time, Lin Yu's daily bouts turned into a living nightmare for almost everyone in Slaughter City. By the time he reached his 50th straight victory, people had begun calling him the Slaughter God. They expected the Slaughter King to step in, but to everyone's surprise, the Slaughter King acknowledged the title the very next day. The city buzzed overnight. Those who scraped out a living in Slaughter City grew more reverent, and at the same time, more afraid of becoming food for Lin Yu's sword. Seated on the throne, Lin Yu's eyes were impossibly cold and desolate. Even the Slaughter King dared not speak. He had spent too long in Slaughter City to be fooled by this kind of thing. Someone who had already won 99 matches in a row and stood one away from 100 was to him plainly a god of slaughter. Considering Lin Yu's background, the Slaughter King said quietly, "Godchild, your current state isn't healthy. After you leave Slaughter City, pick up some refined habits, some elegant pursuits to purge the slaughter chi in you." Lin Yu only nodded. Outwardly, he was unreadable. Inwardly, he was tightly controlled. That austere exterior was deliberate. He didn't want to draw more attention than necessary. Killing so many people and remaining uncorrupted was rare. Outside of evil soul masters, few could do it. Yet Lin Yu had not turned into an evil soul master. Killing had deepened his swordcraft and altered his understanding of the blade, but it had not twisted his spirit. His steadiness came from his state of mind. The Asura god test's so-called clear killing intent was only one branch of that state. There were parallel concepts, a clear sword heart, a clarity of purpose that let one act in the midst of slaughter without being consumed by it. These insights resembled the Buddhist idea of seeing one's true nature and returning to one's original heart. Lin Yu had trained on Wudong Mountain for a while, and though he wasn't a strict Wudong disciple, that training left him with a remarkable inner state. It drew on Taoist roots, but leaned toward a natural, unforced clarity. To him, the slaughter chi amassed in the arena was insignificant. If he wished, the stain could vanish in an instant. Today was his final match, his last day in Slaughter City. He rose slowly from the throne that had been his temporary seat. Cyan wings unfolded behind him, and he plunged down into the arena on a single flap. In less than a breath, he stood at the center of the slaughter ground. A group of spirit masters waited for him, all of them spirit saints with ferocious expressions. The one at their head had spirit power rising to rank 78, and a spirit that had mutated into a soul-devouring crow from a bewitching crow. He sneered, voice low and ugly. "Heh, kid, we had no chance to strike you before, but you came looking for death. If you die, don't cry about it." "Yeah, you asked for this," the others echoed. They shouted with bravado, but their fingers twitched on hidden reserves of spirit power, anxious that Lin Yu might strike first. These were among the city's longest streak holders. Some of them had already broken 50 victories in a row. The soul-devouring crow had nearly 79 straight wins, and he had every reason to resent Lin Yu's sudden rise. In his eyes, Lin Yu's 99 wins were only 20 more than his own, nothing to be terrified of. He believed numbers alone didn't make Lin Yu that much stronger. They missed one thing. Lin Yu did not intend to get bogged down in a fight. He lifted the Qingshuang sword toward the sky. His face tightened in a single purposeful expression, and the sword domain bloomed across the arena. That alone would have been impressive, but Lin Yu did something rarer. He treated the whole formless domain as a blade. The insubstantial sword domain fused into the Qingshuang sword in his hand. With a single, unornamented strike, a strike that used the full force of the sword domain, he cut through the clustered spirit saints. Several of the would-be assailants were cleaved in two without so much as a warning, their life essences annihilated instantly by the domain. Lin Yu named that strike himself, the domain-severing sword. It was simple, direct, and absolute. The sword domain used to sever foe from world, to sever heaven and earth. The slaughter was decisive. The survivors surged forward in panic. They knew that if they failed to kill Lin Yu, then they would die. But they were lambs before a chariot. Bloodlust doesn't teach the skill to stop a perfected blade. By the time their desperation had spent itself, Lin Yu had sheathed the Qingshuang sword. In his light-colored clothes, he stepped down from the arena, as calm and immaculate as if he had not so much as brushed dust. The few remaining villains scattered in Slaughter City erupted into cheers. They would not have to die today. The protagonist's 100 victories were arranged by the Asura god, unlike others. Chapter 111, A Divinity Descends, Treasure Hunting on Hell Road. Lin Yu's string of 100 victories in the mass battles had cost 10,000 lives, leaving the inner city of Slaughter City eerily empty. The moment his assessment finished, those lucky evildoers who hadn't already been cut down, whether by his hand or by fate, felt faint red lights flicker over their bodies. One by one, they stirred as if injected with stimulants, erupting into wild cheers. Slaughter God! Slaughter God! As the crowd roared, Lin Yu felt something shift in his palm. A ball of white light appeared. With a touch, he knew it was a fragment of Slaughter City's authority. It wasn't much, only about 1/7 of the whole, but through it he learned hidden facts about the city. The existence of the 10-headed fierce Yang serpent, and that the Slaughter King's own authority similarly amounted to 1/7. The authority itself wasn't especially useful, and the Asura god had warned him he would have to return it when he ascended to the god realm. Still, familiar with the original timeline, Lin Yu slipped the small portion away and pocketed it. Meanwhile, in the god realm core, a handsome young divinity in luxurious robes, Rong Nianbing, the god of emotion, with heterochromatic red and blue eyes, was forced to nod and accept the two seniors' extremely unfair conditions. The seniors, Asura and the god of destruction, beamed at his reluctant agreement. The god of destruction clapped Nianbing on the shoulder and said in an earnest tone, "Nianbing, when little Lu's disciple comes to the god realm, we'll be relying on you. Work harder. If you spend less time playing with your wives, I'm sure a new law enforcement god will be born here before long." Rong Nianbing, who had only ascended 100,000 years or so and kept a low profile among the divinities, felt particularly put upon by the remark. He missed his wives and vowed that when evil and good returned, he would complain. As for Asura and the god of destruction, satisfied, they transformed into streaks of light and shot toward Douluo Star through the spatial tunnel. Though there was a time difference between Douluo Star and the god realm, their travel took only an instant. Descending to the Douluo Continent, both divinities suppressed their auras. Their arrival still stirred something in the planet's unconscious will. A fleeting hint of azure spread across the sky like a ripple and then vanished. Both Asura and Destruction noticed the brief reaction, but dismissed it as Douluo Star's self-protection. They pressed on toward the odd little town with the Bloodwine Tavern. Back in Slaughter City, Lin Yu didn't return immediately. Using the fragment of Slaughter City's authority in his hand, he stepped onto the Hell Road, the trail used for the Asura god's first trial. Passing Hell Road granted the right to inherit the Asura god's divinity. Lin Yu had no particular interest in owning that divinity, but he was here for the other prize, the legacies left behind by the countless who had perished on this path. Slaughter City had existed for aeons, longer than some cults or halls, and over the years dozens, even hundreds, of people had died here. Those who managed 100 victories were rarely ordinary. They often left behind valuable items. Since he held a fragment of the city's authority, Lin Yu was protected while on Hell Road and could search without fear. He took his time. After an indeterminate while of wandering the edge of a blood-filled crevice, his senses sharpened. In a narrow fissure, half a meter in, something was wedged tight, a red bracelet-style storage spirit tool. Lin Yu squatted, reached carefully, and used a thin layer of spirit power to keep his palm from touching it directly. He eased the bracelet free and examined it. When he unlocked the bracelet with a trace of spirit power, most of it was empty, just shabby clothing and sundry junk. But two items were valuable enough to catch his eye. One was a long feather, crescent red and fine, still faintly suffused with divine aura even after unknown ages. It looked like a phoenix feather. The other was a translucent, crystalline bone, definitely a spirit bone, bluish and clear. Its age and quality marked it as excellent, at least 50,000 years old. Oddly, the bone's properties suggested it came not from a land spirit beast, but from a sea soul beast. Lin Yu set the 30-centimeter feather and the spirit bone away carefully. He didn't know exactly what the feather would do, but the bone would make a fine gift for his mother. After retrieving the bracelet, his luck seemed to stall. Aside from that river of blood in the crevice, he found nothing else. Just then a voice rang out, dry, mocking, almost friendly. "Alas, if you linger here, you'll still be eliminated. Dying sooner or later makes no difference, so let me, Lin, send you off." Chapter 112, Destroying the 10-headed fierce Yang serpent. Finally meeting the two gods on the Douluo Continent, only two kinds of beings currently possess truly transcendent power: spirit beasts and spirit masters. From humanity's birth until the present age, humans had mostly been prey for the spirit beast races. Even now, though spirit masters had developed and narrowed the gap, spirit beasts still outclassed humans both at the top and on average. Maybe one day humanity would catch up or even surpass them, but the future was uncertain. Just as no one had known what Douluo Star once was before spirit beasts and spirit masters rose. The origin of the 10-headed fierce yang serpent was mysterious. Though called a strange beast, it was likely a remnant species from an age before the spirit beasts, a survivor left in this hell road. It hatched at an unknown time, cultivated for many years, and became a minor overlord within this path. Lin Yu walked the main trail of the hell road and didn't go far before he ran straight into it. Perhaps because he came from outside, the serpent was sensitive to external auras and spotted him when he was still 2 or 3 miles away. On the single narrow road that led to the hell road's exit, the dark red snake slithered forward with a rustling sound. Though called 10-headed, it really had 9 protrusions along its head and back, bone extensions fused to its skull that from a distance could be mistaken for small snakeheads. That odd formation gave it its name. In the dim of the hell road, Lin Yu's keen sight made each protrusion look like a bright red mushroom pulsing with blood. Its eyes burned like small lanterns, betraying sharp intelligence. The creature's gaze locked onto Lin Yu, the intruder. Dozens of meters long, this was the 10-headed fierce yang serpent. Despite its power, it likely hadn't lived more than 1,000 years. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easily defeated by Tang Chen in the past. Lin Yu felt its hostility, but only smiled faintly. The serpent spat a torrent of scarlet, venomous flame. Lin Yu immediately summoned his spirit. With his spirit anchored, Lin Yu, already a 49th rank spirit ancestor, spread wings and soared. Seeing Lin Yu suddenly in the air, the serpent's long-hoarded flame was wasted. The sight of Lin Yu's huge wings struck fear into the beast. Lin Yu's spirit, the emerald demon bird, was a later emerging spirit beast of the hawk-falcon type and carried a natural suppression over snakes far beyond the pretenders that called themselves phoenixes. That innate racial pressure made the serpent's eyes narrow with nervousness. It unleashed another mouthful of poisonous fire toward Lin Yu. But Lin Yu was far more agile in the air. He dodged and immediately activated his third spirit ability, Ice Splendor Lure. Layers of solid ice wrapped the serpent's body. In a single breath, it was frozen into a statue, but fire and ice contend. As a fire-type spirit beast, the serpent ignited itself with searing flames and began melting the ice. Before it could fully free itself, Lin Yu, sword in hand, drove forward. He stabbed straight toward the serpent's head with his Qing sword. The strike was overwhelmingly fierce, a sweeping blow backed by absolute will. The serpent screamed, its vertical pupils wide with terror. In desperation, it detonated the 9 red protrusions on its head. The 9 exploded and fused into a single gold-red bead the size of a fist, which the serpent hurled up to block the sword. Exactly the moment Lin Yu expected. As the bead flew, he used his second spirit ability, Paired Luan. 2 clones, each carrying 80% of his strength, appeared and together intercepted the bead. The instant they struck it, the serpent, breaking out of the ice in a single breath, tried to snatch the bead back. But Lin Yu had already closed the distance. Swift as a shadow, Lin Yu opened his sword domain. With will and frost, clear frost, he suppressed the serpent, then swung his blade down at the remaining true head. It was only flesh and bone before Lin Yu, whose swordsmanship had nearly become his sword Dao. The frosted blade was like driven snow. Its edge severed the serpent's head clean off. Dark red blood sprayed as Lin Yu drew back. The serpent's raised body collapsed, its head convulsing in death throes. Afterward, Lin Yu recalled his 2 clones and collected the serpent's inner core, which his clones had secured. He placed the core in a jade box and, using his authority in Slaughter City, left the Hell Road. He lingered another day in Slaughter City, then passed through the corridor guarded by terrifying knights and emerged at the Bloodwine Tavern by the entrance. His sudden return sent the tavern into pandemonium. Several desperados drinking bloody wine bolted upright in terror. The new bartender fainted outright. The once lively tavern fell utterly silent at Lin Yu's appearance, which left him slightly bemused. "Really? Am I that scary?" he muttered. Stepping over the sprawled patrons, Lin Yu diffused the killing and bloodshed he'd accumulated in Slaughter City and returned to a sunny, cheerful, handsome demeanor. He hurried through the small town, planning to go look for the ghost leopard nearby, but found someone already waiting for him. In a pavilion that hadn't been there before sat two men drinking tea, one in purple robes, the other in blood red. Lin Yu glanced over and met their eyes. The purple-robed man snorted coldly. "Humph, you finally came out. I was going to send someone to fish you out otherwise." Chapter 113, Dual Cultivation for Perfection. Personally welcome to the God Realm in the future. Grandmaster, Junior Martial Uncle, you two hold important positions in the God Realm. Is it really all right for you to come down so openly? The God of Destruction lifted the teacup. Lin Yu poured and smirked. What's the harm? Evil and good both slipped away. Why shouldn't we come down and have some fun? The situation with the five of them from the God Realm was enough to make anyone speechless. Even the most well-behaved among them, his master, the goddess of life, had always been planning an escape. The two unreliable god kings were even worse. Lin Yu still couldn't help being puzzled. But why didn't you come down with Master? How did you? Before he could finish, the God of Destruction's expression hardened, and the teacup in his hand vanished. The Asura god, usually reclusive and quietly sipping his tea, glanced at Lin Yu and thought, is this what mortals mean when they say not to speak of something before it happens? It seemed so. Lin Yu, quick to pick up the mood, changed the subject immediately. Grandmaster, I heard the Slaughter King say earlier that Junior Martial Uncle had something to give me. Is that true? He'd been idly watching the show, but now it turned on him. The God of Destruction saw through Lin Yu's deliberate diversion, and after a cold snort, said nothing more. He inwardly decided to complain to Xiao Wu later about her disciple's lack of honesty. The Asura god, recovering his composure, answered, Yes, as the holder of the goddess of life's legacy, you're not qualified to inherit my divinity, so you can't obtain the slaughter god domain. But you've completed 100 slaughters. This is a token of compensation. A shield appeared before Lin Yu in a flash. 5-colored light danced across its surface. A brilliant shield carved with countless beasts and human figures, radiating strong 5 elements energy. This is something I picked up on the Wuxing continent in my early years. Its original name is Tianqi. It's a divine artifact left by a divinity strongman from an unknown era. Its defensive power is very high. Had a strongman of my rank held it, even the blood sword might have trouble breaking through. As the Asura god spoke, the God of Destruction's eyes lit up. Here was an item any divinity who could descend to the lower realm might acquire. After all those years in the God realm, if not for gains from the Dragon God War, he would have very few possessions. The Asura god saw the change in his expression and with a calm push slid the Tianqi toward Lin Yu. Don't think about stealing it, he said flatly. You and I won't fight. I don't want those two couples to find another excuse to make trouble. At the God of Destruction's earlier eagerness to borrow the artifact gone, the Asura god could finally return to his original reason for coming, the mystery of how sword intent perfection could transform into a domain. Lin Yu blinked. Junior Martial Uncle, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been stuck at sword intent perfection? The Asura god shook his head. Too long. I can't say how long. I've been at this step for ages. I felt the bottleneck long ago, but I could never cross it. It always felt like something was missing. The 5 divinities of the God realm had been born in the God realm itself. They had seen much from their position, but they had never walked the path from mortal to divinity. They lacked certain insights into the natural world that mortals, especially those from Taoist or Buddhist traditions, often cultivate alongside raw power. The God realm and its affiliated planets focused almost exclusively on energy and rank. Their top cultivators chased higher rank without paying attention to the underlying understanding of nature itself. They cultivated life without cultivating nature, and that was why they stalled at the final step. Some exceptions existed. For example, the sea god used the faith of all beings in Douluo Star's seas to achieve a breakthrough and become a faith divinity. But mostly, planets dependent on chance yielded only a few who encountered a divinity's legacy. Many talented individuals died without ever understanding why they couldn't surpass the last threshold. In his previous life, Lin Yu had known that Taoist and Buddhist schools emphasized a kind of dual cultivation, training both the body's spirit and one's insight into the workings of nature. That balance, understanding the world and raising one's realm in tandem, was crucial. It was common knowledge among Tao sects and even some lay scholars, but it was foreign to the divinities who had never walked a mortal path. When Lin Yu explained the Tao of dual cultivation, both the Asura god and the god of destruction, his convenient grandmaster, stared, then fell into deep thought. Once an idea took hold for beings of such innate aptitude, enlightenment followed quickly. Over the next 3 days and nights, the effects were dramatic. The god of destruction was the first to awaken. His purple eyes opened with a new clarity, and when he looked at Lin Yu, something fundamental had shifted. "I never realized," he murmured, "that our failure to break through came from never cultivating an understanding of the natural world, of everything in the universe." For him, studying destruction itself, the annihilation of races, the fall of planets, the decay of nature, could grant a higher comprehension and lift him to the next level. The Asura god, who had dived deeper into Lin Yu's method, reached a different but decisive conclusion. The sword intent that had lingered at perfection for who knew how long snapped forward. It broke through into the sword domain. "Thank you," the Asura god said. "If not for you, I can't say how long we'd have remained stuck at God King rank. With your dual cultivation method, we and even the other gods of the God realm have a chance to take a further step. When we meet again among the clouds someday, I, Asura, will personally welcome you into the God realm." With those words, the Asura god condensed into crimson divine light and departed. At nearly the same moment, the god of destruction became dark purple light and flew off as well. Lin Yu was about to look up on instinct when something suddenly fell toward him. "Ouch! Hiss, that hurts. If you were going to give it to me, just hand it over. What kind of skill is it to hit me on the head?" Rubbing his skull, Lin Yu picked up the object the Asura god had tossed at him. On closer inspection, it was another divine artifact, the boundary-breaking shuttle, a device that could temporarily pierce space and serve as an emergency escape. Even in the God realm, it was a prized life-saving tool. On Douluo Star, provided one's strength was sufficient, the shuttle could take you to another continent in minutes. Now, in his left hand was the boundary-breaking shuttle. In his right, the Sky Citadel shield, a 5 elements essence divine artifact. Both were gifts from the two elders. While talking with the Asura god earlier, he had watched closely. The Asura god wasn't loquacious, but he did not seem to be hiding unspeakable secrets, contrary to what others had speculated. As for the divine force the Asura god admitted belonged to Tang Hao, that was believable. Few divinities could dissolve the angel god's divine force in someone like Qian Renxue. "The divine force in Tang Hao, my legacy's descendant, is indeed mine," the Asura god had said. "But some of the things I did at first were for the God realm. I never expected to be used one day. Still, you arriving ruined half of that person's plan and let me break free. That's why I gave you the Sky Citadel. It's almost as valuable as a super divine artifact. After all, a slaughter god domain, no matter how potent, can't compare to the true worth of a divine artifact." Recalling those words, Lin Yu found himself trusting the Asura god more. The god's blunt, upright nature made him easy to exploit, and whoever had been able to exploit a god at the peak of God-King cultivation must be extremely powerful, perhaps only a bit below the Asura god in strength. He sighed inwardly. The god realm really was more complicated than he'd imagined. Unable to detect the mastermind from afar, there was nothing to do about it now. He set the thought aside and focused on claiming the artifacts. Divine artifacts had spirits. They would seek out their masters. Recognition was an old method. The owner let 2 drops of blood fall, added a trace of mental force, and the artifact accepted its master. Lin Yu pricked his finger, let 2 drops of blood fall, and sent a sliver of mental force along with them. The recognition process completed almost instantly. The 2 artifacts flared into multicolored spiritual light and sank into his sea of consciousness through his glabella. After finishing, he left the small town where Slaughter City had been hidden. 30 li out, Even though he only held 1/7 of Slaughter City's authority, he could still feel that faint connection lingering in the darkness. A smile touched his lips. I'm ready. You have to show yourself. If you tease me for nothing, you'll pay dearly. His step lightened. Passing a river, he was about to wade in for a bath when he ran into someone he'd rather not see just then. Clad in a gray robe with a bamboo hat and a rain cape, a fishing rod in hand, the man casually hauled in a pristine foot-long white fish. Not bad. You'll have to put in a move later, kid, the fisherman said. An ugly smile crossed Lin Yu's face as he called out carefully, Long time no see, Grandpa. Why aren't you at Spirit Hall? What are you doing all the way out here? The man by the river was Qian Renxue, High Priest of Spirit Hall. He chuckled and said in a leisurely tone, Kid, do you know what a priest is? By definition, we're supported to eat for free. That's how it is for us old brothers. As long as Spirit Hall stands, who can handle all the upheavals on the continent? Life's hard. I'm old and I've worked for Spirit Hall for so many years. You say I'm just enjoying myself. What's wrong with that? Not at all. Not at all. What's wrong with that? Lin Yu replied aloud, but inwardly he was skeptical. Spirit Hall is your family. Of course you can relax. Still, he grew cautious. Qian Renxue wouldn't be wandering out here for no reason. He likely had a purpose. And as Lin Yu suspected, Qian Renxue wasn't here by accident. The old man's eyes flicked to him, half smiling. But whether it's the Angel Clan or Spirit Hall, some people make me uneasy. What do you think I should do about them? Qian Renxue dropped the pretenses. Tell me, what did you go there for? Don't tell me it was to acquire a slaughter god domain. That won't fool me. You've got a god test. You're unrelated to the divinity behind Slaughter City. They aren't the sort to hand out a domain to you. Old Ginger was as spicy as ever. For a divine servant like Qian Renxue, nothing could be hidden. Lin Yu had already prepared a cover. He summoned the Sky Citadel, kept the truth about Slaughter City's authority and his meetings with the two gods to himself, and spun a story that just barely satisfied the high priest. Qian Renxue put down his fishing rod and smacked Lin Yu on the head with it. Even though you're a divinity legacy and you benefited, you should go to places like Slaughter City less often. I don't want Xiao Wu to face separation and death at such a young age. Understand? Understood, Lin Yu said apologetically. After scolding him a few more times, Qian Renxue sighed and tossed the fish basket to Lin Yu. You've got a good hand with cooking, kid. Whether this old man gets a good meal tonight depends on you. Lin Yu took the basket and found a secluded spot to prepare the white fish. At that moment, Ghost Leopard padded out from the side and bowed, looking embarrassed. Young master, I'm truly sorry. That place is dangerous. I had no choice but to tell the high priest. Please punish me. Lin Yu understood Ghost Leopard's motives. He'd acted out of concern for Lin Yu's safety. And considering Ghost Leopard was a titled Douluo apologizing to him, a mere level 49 spirit ancestor, there was nothing to resent. Chapter 115, Barbaric Stone Forest. With Ghost Leopard's help, preparing the grilled white fish was far easier for Lin Yu. A dignified titled Douluo assisting him, Qian Renxue noticed it, but said nothing. It was Lin Yu's craftsmanship that stood out. Even Qian Renxue, who was used to the world's finest delicacies, ate with clear relish. Some people were simply born for a trade. When it came to cooking, natural talent was not something mere hard work could fully make up for. Without a doubt, Lin Yu was extremely talented, otherwise he couldn't have satisfied someone like Qian Renxue. After more than an hour, the three were full. Qian Renxue sat back leisurely and said, The Demon Bear is still at Heavendu Royal Academy, and Qian Renxue hasn't sent any messages. There shouldn't be anything urgent. You don't need to rush back. Lin Yu hesitated. Grandpa, do you mean you want me to break through before returning? Spirit power in Slaughter City had been sparse, but nearly 4 months of cultivation had taken him from rank 48 to rank 49, leaving him only 1 rank short of Spirit King. He already carried a 10,000-year Spirit Ring, but the leap from Spirit Ancestor to Spirit King, like the leap from Spirit Grandmaster to Spirit Elder, was a watershed in a Spirit Master's path, a bottleneck that was inherently hard to cross. He had only recently reached rank 49 and still needed time to cultivate to its peak. Qian Renxue nodded firmly. Exactly. Whether it's you or Qian Renxue, cultivation is the foundation. Since you're out here, don't hurry back. I'll guide you. Once you break through to Spirit King and secure a spirit ring, I'll send you back to Heaven Do City. Put that way, Lin Yu couldn't argue and agreed at once. He had confidence in his own advantages, but he wasn't arrogant enough to dismiss the Council of Experience. With guidance from Qian, one of the top experts among spirit masters, he could certainly avoid many detours. More than 3 months passed. Under Qian instruction, Lin Yu corrected many misconceptions in his cultivation. The breakthrough to Spirit King became a natural result of accumulated spirit power. He achieved it a few days earlier. During this period, he also learned secrets known only to titled Douluo, including the concept of the Spirit Core. The Spirit Core wasn't a later invention, it had long existed, but in this era, condensing one was considerably harder. At the time, rank 96, the minimum for a Spirit Hall priest, was roughly the lowest rank at which a Spirit Core could be successfully formed. By contrast, 10,000 years later, a Spirit Core could be condensed merely by reaching the titled rank. Exceptions existed. The two divine attendants, Qian and Bo Saichi, had been able to form their first Spirit Core upon their titled Douluo breakthroughs thanks to the augmentation of the God test. Forming a second Spirit Core still required a limit Douluo breakthrough and relied on the resonance method. Qian teaching over those months was comprehensive. Though he often gave only outlines, he provided Lin Yu with the corresponding secret texts to study in depth later. In that era, spirit beasts surpassed humans both in overall numbers and in high-level combat power. Apart from the far Northland and the Star Do Great Forest, many other regions concentrated large numbers of spirit beasts. One such place was the barbaric stone forest in the southwest of the Heaven Do Empire. Despite its name, the forest was an expanse of reddish-brown rock stretching for hundreds of miles. Strange stones jutted up like petrified trees. When the wind moved through the hollows, it made eerie, wailing noises, and locals often called the place the Devil's Stone Ridge. Lin Yu followed Qian here for the first time. At a small stall in Hunter Town, some 30 miles from the forest, the two sat together. Qian, clearly a familiar patron, greeted the owner warmly and ordered the local specialty, steamed buns and 2 bowls of spirit beast meat broth. He tore off the outer layer of a bun and took a sip of broth, his face softening with nostalgia. "Try it," he said. "It won't compare to yours, but it has its own flavor." It wasn't his first visit. Decades ago, he'd once brought a 10-year-old Qian Shunji here to play. The stall owner had changed twice since then. To others, he was the high priest of the spirit hall, but only he understood the feeling of standing where he did. His talent had always been strong, rivaling Tang Chen's, yet the existence of the spirit hall and the angel god's legacy had become chains on his advancement. He had too many attachments, ties to the Clear Sky sect and to the hall, and couldn't simply abandon them as Tang Chen had to pursue divinity and love. That stagnation lasted for years until something finally snapped him awake. Perhaps learning that Lin Yu and Qian Renxue had pledged themselves to each other helped. In any case, he no longer defined himself solely as the angel god's attendant or the hall's high priest. He quietly hoped Lin Yu and Qian Renxue would marry and have children before their ascension so he could taste a little familial happiness. After eating, they reached the edge of the barbaric stone forest. Wind blew through the stone hollows, and the wails rose like ghosts. Though nothing visible stirred, Lin Yu felt a chill run through him. Qian chuckled, poured spirit power into his feet, and stomped hard. The ground shuddered, and hidden spirit beasts in the forest stirred and fled into the open. Most were strong, nearly all reached or exceeded the century rank, but the moment they sensed Qian aura, they scattered like startled birds. "Let's go," Qian said. "The spirit ring you're after belongs to a small overlord in here. That creature sleeps a lot, so we'll have to make noise to wake it." Lin Yu couldn't help feeling impressed and inwardly grateful that having an experienced elder like Qian was such an advantage. A veteran who had traveled nearly the entire Douluo Continent knew exactly which spirit beasts lived where. The 5th spirit ring he sought, an Earth attribute avian spirit beast, had a strange origin indeed, and Qian had clearly come prepared to find it. Chapter 116, Profound Phoenix Feather Control. Trembling Duuluo star Lin Yu followed behind Qian, stopping and starting as they went. Their pace was slow, but by noon they had made it into the depths of the barbaric stone forest. Qian face, however, was dark. He had stirred up a commotion big enough to attract several 50,000-year spirit beasts, yet he still hadn't located the one he had in mind for Lin Yu. Lin Yu asked softly, "Grandpa, which one are you looking for?" That 47,000-year earth griffin back there looked pretty good. Flying spirit beasts often favored wind and fire attributes. Some had metal or water, and many were mixed types. Earth-attributed flyers were rare, and even Qian didn't know many of them. He shook his head. "You've got the God test coming, so you don't have to worry too much about the age limit on a spirit ring. Still, if we can find something a little better, you'll face the God test with more confidence. If we can't find it here, I'll take you somewhere else to look." They reached the southern edge of the barbaric stone forest. A few hundred miles beyond lay Star Luo Empire territory. The forest's landscape wasn't just reddish-brown rock. In this southern region, patches of yellow-green vegetation broke up the stone. Not far off, a dark shape rose from the ground, 5 or 6 meters tall, chicken-like. Qian excellent eyesight brightened. He pointed. "There, that's the one I meant, the thick earth profound pheasant. Its cultivation is about 54,000 years. There's a rumor it's of phoenix lineage, but most people laugh. Looks like a chicken." Lin Yu looked. The bird was still pecking at the ground, its feathers an earthy yellow streaked with crimson. It was unmistakably chicken-like, but its Yoren presence in the barbaric stone forest and its high cultivation showed it was no simple domestic fowl. When Qian made his move, the creature let out a roar, and the ground shook for hundreds of meters. Some wind-eroded stone pillars collapsed. Smaller, spirit beasts were buried alive. In the stone forest, such an attack could trap spirit masters without flying mounts as well. To Qian, though, it was nothing. With a flick and a surge of his spirit energy, he cleared the debris and closed on the bird. The thick earth profound pheasant had tricks of its own, a haze of profound yellow light, feather-like and resembling a phoenix tail, flared up and blocked Qian casual grab. Qian blinked in surprise. The rumors were true. It looks like a chicken, but it really does have phoenix blood. He pressed harder. The yellow feathers cracked and crumbled, powerless to hold, and the bird immediately bolted. It couldn't fly. Its attribute prevented it, so it ran instead, but it was no match for Qian and was soon caught. Lin Yu, practiced at the routine by now, took out his autumn ink from his storage spirit tool and cut the bird's head off. That Lu Gao, his cultivation talent isn't outstanding, but his forging skill is unmatched in Douluo, Qian said with a casual sigh as he settled down to act as Lin Yu's protector. A moment later, a black spirit ring formed around the corpse. Lin Yu activated his spirit and began absorbing it. The thick earth profound pheasant was a 50,000-plus year spirit beast, only about 20,000 years older than the fourth spirit ring Lin Yu had absorbed earlier, so it would be a challenging but manageable absorption. He felt the pressure, but resentment and difficulty meant little to him. In less than 15 minutes, Lin Yu completed the breakthrough. As the bird's power merged into his giant winged emerald demon bird spirit, the last fifth of the creature's blue-green feathers faded and were replaced by a deep yellow. When that yellow spread to the remaining portion of his plumage, Lin Yu's spirit broke through smoothly to Spirit King. He rose directly to the peak of level 52, and in under a month, he would reach 53. Beyond saving him half a year of arduous cultivation in spirit energy, the thick earth profound pheasant gifted him a defensive spirit ability, feathers that could be summoned to ignore attacks below 3 times his own spirit power. All in all, it was an excellent gain. Another quarter hour passed as Lin Yu adjusted his spirit energy and felt the changes. The 5-colored profound feathers on his tail glowed. After the origin enhancement of 5 spirit rings, the emerald demon bird was no longer what it had been. It had evolved into a new form. The most immediate witness of that evolution wasn't Lin Yu, but Qian. When Lin Yu had absorbed his 4th spirit ring, Qian had glanced at a scene so immense it condensed countless years into a single moment, almost crushing him with the sense of another world. Now, as a faint silhouette of an ancient divine bird, Yi Niao, projected from Lin Yu's spirit, the entire Douluo star trembled. The star's will, acting on instinct, let out a silent wail toward the god realm that long governed it. The five divinities, who had just returned and were idly chatting in the god realm core, felt that wail immediately. Even the usually composed god of evil frowned. "Douluo star, what's happening?" Before he could open a projection to check, the goddess of life sighed. "Xiaohe, you don't need to. It's probably my precious disciple. If he came up to the god realm, that would be interesting." The goddess of life, thanks to a divinity link with Lin Yu, had detected his activity and couldn't understand what he was doing to put the Douluo star's will in such alarm. She also planned to use the excuse of delivering his reward for the second god test to request a visit to the lower realm from the god of evil. The god of evil didn't hesitate and granted her permission to go. The god of destruction's eyes flashed with a hint of grievance, as if complaining at how readily the god of evil agreed, which made the god of evil momentarily embarrassed enough to wish he could dig a hole and disappear. But there was no avoiding it. The trouble stemmed from the goddess of life's disciple, so it made sense for her to go down. They couldn't very well send destruction with her. Someone had to remain in the god realm. If destruction went, who would stay so the god of evil and the god of kindness could continue their amusements on Wuxing Continent? Chapter 117, Goddess Descends. 5 elements integrate. The goddess of life was swift. She arrived at the portal to Douluo Star in an instant. She was also a little anxious, worried her precious disciple might make trouble. When she stepped through the portal, she found she was not alone. Another figure stood there, and the sight made her delicate brows draw together. "Sea god, what are you doing here?" she asked. Clad in a luxurious sea blue robe and bearing a golden trident-like divine artifact, the sea god was an amiable-faced elderly man with a trace of unease. He had recently ascended to the god realm through faith he'd forged himself. On seeing the goddess of life, he immediately bowed respectfully. "Goddess, greetings. The will of Douluo Star seems to be in crisis. I came to see what is happening." The goddess of life waved him off with a faint air of indifference. "You don't need to. Have you forgotten that without the command of the 2 god kings, not even the Asura god can easily descend to the lower realm? It's fortunate you haven't gone down yet, otherwise the Asura god would be looking for you again." The mention of the Asura god made the sea god's expression shift uncomfortably. He forced an awkward smile. "Yes, goddess, I will remember. I ask that you investigate the cause when you descend." The goddess of life nodded, agreeing outwardly, then slipped into the portal to Douluo Star. The sea god watched her go for a moment, then turned and headed back toward his temple. A streak of blue divine light cut through the god realm's airspace. All divinities, above the 2nd rank, recognized it as the sea god's passage. In a secluded mountain forest, Rong Nianbing, recently returned from the god realm core, and in the company of several beautiful women, caught the sea god's aura and paused thoughtfully, only to be called away by his companions before he could act. The portal travel was quick. The goddess of life arrived outside Douluo Star and found a situation worse than she had feared. The planet was no longer merely frightened. A force utterly beyond ordinary comprehension was close to grinding away its will. If Douluo Star's will, the collective instinctive will formed by all life on the planet, were extinguished, the loss to the god realm might be acceptable on paper, since Douluo Star was merely a planet under their jurisdiction. But if the planet's will vanished, the lives bound to it would be destroyed with it. In other words, once the planet's will was annihilated, all the life that depended on it would vanish as well. The fallout for every living being on Douluo Star would be catastrophic. Seeing this, the goddess of life did not go straight to Lin Yu. She moved to the planet's life core instead and used her divine force to forcibly stabilize it. With the life core secured, no matter how agitated the planet's will became, it would hold. After stabilizing the core, she activated her own divinity to contact Lin Yu. Compared to the goddess of life, Lin Yu's quota within the god of life was minuscule. The moment she activated her divinity, Lin Yu, who had just completed his breakthrough, fell into his sea of consciousness. Qian beside him saw the shift. As he moved to check, a vibrant, leaf-shaped green life divine mark appeared on Lin Yu's forehead. At the sight, Qian bowed respectfully and then sat down calmly to continue protecting him. Inside the sea of consciousness, the goddess of life scolded Lin Yu in person, quite literally. She smacked his head in exasperation, eyebrows inverted, huffing. "Little rascal, I only left for a little while and you've already caused so much trouble." Her reprimand stung. The head smack hurt badly enough that Lin Yu nearly teared up. He looked bewildered and aggrieved. "Master, why did you hit me? I only finished my breakthrough to Spirit King. I didn't do anything wrong." The goddess of life's expression softened at his pitiful look. He was her precious disciple. The sting of that smack bothered her too. She recounted how Lin Yu's spirit had undergone a second awakening and had nearly blown Douluo Star apart. After hearing everything, she gently stroked his forehead and smiled. "See? Isn't that a little outrageous?" Lin Yu nodded, stunned. He had never expected that merely awakening a spirit could provoke the will of the entire planet to such extremes. It seemed absurd to him. The goddess of life understood and, showing indulgence, ran her fingers through his hair. "Don't blame the planet for being timid. The main reason is your first spirit. It's extraordinary. Even without my divinity, it wouldn't be difficult for you to become a god, perhaps even a god king." In the goddess of life's memory, only the dragon god and phoenix god could match that level of power. Even if Lin Yu had been a late bloomer, his talent would still carry him far. Hearing his master's fond words, Lin Yu smiled. "That may be, but inheriting Master Sister's divinity makes things much easier." His sweet talk earned him an affectionate pinch on the cheek. "Only you know how to flatter. I've handled the matter for you. Also, these are the ultimate 5-element essences I promised you last time. 10 kinds in total. You can integrate them into your spirit yourself. I must go now. Remember to speed up your god test. Sister will be waiting for you in the god realm." The goddess of life's image and voice faded in Lin Yu's sea of consciousness, leaving a soft cluster of 5-colored light, the ultimate 5-element essences she had collected from the Wuxing continent. Lin Yu reached out and absorbed them into his spirit through his sea of consciousness. With no projection from the goddess to provoke the planet, Douluo Star calmed and no longer reacted violently. As the 5-element essences flowed into him, Lin Yu immediately gained a measure of control over Yang Fire, Yang Wood, Yang Water, Yang Metal, Yang Earth, and Yin Earth. Previously, he had relied on spirit rings to approximate 5 elements' power. Now, by absorbing the essences, his spirit's origin underwent a transformative change. Chapter 118, Spirit Power Cap Increase, Mother's Request. The 5-element essence the goddess of life had gifted him came from the 10 heavenly stem divine beasts of the Wuxing continent. Its inherent level was already at the pinnacle of the ultimate elements, only a hair's breadth below divine rank. That, however, was exactly the limit Lin Yu could absorb. Had it actually been divine rank, he wouldn't have been able to take it in at all. And even if he had, absorbing divine rank 5-element essence now would be like uprooting seedlings to force them to grow, which would harm his long-term development. Elemental divinities were fearsome in the god realm. Even relying only on 5 elements attributes, Lin Yu could one day become one of the most formidable existences. For now, though, this ultimate 5-element essence, the strongest level just beneath divine rank, served as critical nourishment for perfecting his spirit. Absorbing it was not quick work. Lin Yu spent a full half-month refining and controlling the ultimate elemental origin. He had expected a breakthrough to rank 53. After all, he'd already been sitting at the peak of rank 52, so the actual breakthrough itself wasn't a surprise. What startled him was that during the refinement, he had inadvertently expanded his spirit power cap. Normally, a spirit master's spirit power cap is fairly fixed. Apart from support system anomalies, spirit power at each rank is roughly similar across individuals. That was why, in clashes between spirit masters of the same rank, unless someone was a prodigy like Lin Yu whose spirit and combat skill outclassed others, their power levels wouldn't differ dramatically. What mattered most in a fight was the rate and total amount of spirit power each side could consume. After refining the ultimate five-element essence, Lin Yu found his cap had been raised, significantly. Judging from the remaining spirit power in his body, his cap had expanded to roughly 5 times that of a spirit master of the same rank. With 5 times the spirit power, he could not only outlast peers, but, he was confident, even fully exhaust a spirit saint's reserves if he pressed the attack. The after effects came suddenly. When Lin Yu came out of his meditative state and woke up, a profound weakness washed over him. He'd been without food or water for over half a month during the refinement. Even at the Spirit King realm, the strain showed. Qian Renxue, who had been assigned to act as his protector nearby, hurried over at once to check on him. Seeing Lin Yu awake, the old man internally breathed a sigh of relief. It was only hunger. Eat, rest a bit, and he'd recover. Out of affection for his granddaughter and concern for his grandson-in-law, Qian Renxue stayed close for a couple more days. Lin Yu's body gradually recovered in that time, and the 4/5 of his spirit reserves that had been left empty when his cap ballooned up were finally replenished. His foundation had always been stable. Having merely expanded the cap, a man at his realm could refill the extra portion without difficulty. Once his spirit power was restored, Lin Yu straightened his clothes and prepared to say his goodbyes. Before he could move, a pair of powerful hands grabbed him and pinned him in place. It was, of course, Qian Renxue. Lin Yu was about to protest when the old man scolded him with a dry chuckle. "You fledgling fly too slowly. How about this old man gives you a ride?" 3 pairs of golden-white wings unfurled from Qian Renxue's back, and with a single fierce beat they tore the air. Sonic booms snapped as they shot upward. Qian Renxue wrapped a shield of spirit power around Lin Yu in time, or the shock alone would have left him badly injured. The speed was terrifying, a testament to why Qian Renxue was considered one of the fastest and strongest among the 3 grand masters who roamed the skies. Tang Chen might have been formidable in a straight fight, but he couldn't match Qian Renxue's supersonic mobility. Each of the 3 ultimate masters had their own strengths, and unless they fought to the death, it was hard to declare a definitive superior. Qian Renxue carried Lin Yu near Heaven Do City in less than half a day, casually dropping him off at a safe distance before taking his leave in a hurry. Lin Yu paid little mind to the dramatic arrival. He shook the dizziness from his head, spread his wings, and flew straight for home. The Lin family manor was as familiar as ever. Servants bowed respectfully when they saw him land, and within moments Lin Zhan and his wife came out from the backyard, summoned by the hurried attendants. Seeing their son alive and well washed away the tightness in Lin Zhan's face. Yu Ru, Lin Yu's mother, practically collided with him in her haste and hugged him until he was nearly gagged. "You little brat," she scolded through tears. "You left without a word and scared your old mother half to death." Lin Zhan, watching his wife overprotect their son, scowled. "Yu Ru, just you wait. I'll teach this rascal a lesson for making us worry." Before his hand came down, Yu Ru stepped in front of Lin Yu and leveled a cold look at her husband. "Lin Zhan, what do you mean rascal? If he's a rascal, what does that make me? Or you?" Lin Zhan's raised hand froze midair. He forced an awkward smile, inwardly grateful he hadn't actually struck him. If he'd hit him, he thought, he wouldn't be allowed into the bedroom for at least a month. After nearly a year away, Lin Yu stayed the full day at home, mainly to keep his mother company. Lin Zhan, contrary to appearances, was almost hoping his son would take his leave. Not because he disliked him, but because having Lin Yu home complicated the household atmosphere. When Lin Yu finished fussing with his attire and announced he planned to go see someone he hadn't seen in a long time, his mother stepped forward and, half smiling, adjusted his robes with pointed maternal care. "You heir," she teased, "you've dressed so formally. Which young lady are you going to visit?" "I'm not going to see a young lady," Lin Yu replied, trying for nonchalance. "I'm going to see His Highness the Crown Prince. Besides, haven't you forgotten? His Majesty intends to arrange a marriage for me 6 years from now." "You can take Shui Ye's words with a grain of salt," Yu Ru said, eyes sparkling. "But about that girl, when are you going to bring her home so your mother can meet her?" Her words landed like a stone. Bringing Sister Shui home now, was this really the right time? Lin Yu felt the familiar rush of confusion and surprise, but he kept his expression calm, letting his mother's excitement hang in the air while his mind began to race with the implications. Chapter 19. Make a Mark. A secret chamber deep in the Crown Prince's bedchamber of the Eastern Palace. After almost a year apart, Lin Yu and Qian Renxue were finally reunited and wrapped up in each other. Qian Renxue had grown taller. She sat in Lin Yu's lap, her pale, tender arms around his neck, her exquisite face pressed against him. When she heard that Lin Yu's mother, Yu, wanted to meet her future daughter-in-law, she flushed with shyness and tightened her grip. Then, reluctantly, she said, "Xiao Yu, is that really possible? You know I can't leave right now." Lin Yu toyed with a strand of her golden hair and considered for a moment. "You're right. How about we wait until Sister Shuer finishes her mission?" Qian Renxue lifted his chin and their eyes met, her brilliant gold against his light red. Her lips met his in a soft kiss, and the warm sweetness of it made Lin Yu understand an old saying. From then on, the monarch no longer presided over morning court. Having a beauty who could topple kingdoms at one side was hard to resist. They lingered over each other for a long time. When Qian Renxue finally pulled back, her lips slightly swollen, she smiled with a trace of mischief and said, "I wouldn't make you wait, Xiao Yu. In 2 weeks, Heaven-Do City will hold its Lantern Festival. Besides the usual guards, Shueye himself will go into the city under the pretense of sharing the joy with the people. I thought you might use that chance to cause trouble for Shueye, or even take out Shui Xing." Lin Yu smiled faintly. He knew the girl in his arms was no ordinary beauty. If she didn't seize such an opportunity, she wouldn't be Qian Renxue. Caught off guard, she shot him an exaggerated, annoyed glare, pinched his cheek and pouted. "Oh, Xiao Yu, is that how you see me?" "Isn't it?" he replied. Qian Renxue huffed, then hugged him again. Surprised, Lin Yu relaxed as he sank into her warmth. Seizing a spot of bare skin not covered by his clothes, she bit down hard with pearly teeth. Lin Yu gasped. He hadn't expected her to take revenge so literally. He had been careful not to use his spirit power near her, wary of hurting her, so the bite stung. After a moment, he got used to the pain and simply held her, feeling the warmth and softness of the woman against him. When she let go, Qian Renxue wiped the mark with her sleeve and smiled, lips curling into a satisfied grin. "I've left a mark on you. You're officially mine now." Despite her bold words, Qian Renxue softened around Lin Yu. Though she was the little princess of Spirit Hall and bore the 6-winged angel martial soul, she willingly set aside that lofty pride for him. After their long-awaited reunion, they stayed in each other's arms until sleep claimed them. At dawn, they woke with the same routine they always shared. The first sight they saw was each other. Qian Renxue smiled without a word, tidied her skirt, then changed into Shui Qinghei's clothes, taking on that appearance again. They had agreed yesterday to visit the Lin family together on the day of the Lantern Festival. Qian Renxue, now made to look like Shui Qinghei, slipped out of the secret chamber. Lin Yu left by another exit. After a simple breakfast in Heaven-Do City, he headed to the Heaven-Do Royal Academy. He passed through the gate and walked to his residence by the stream. Ghost Leopard, back earlier, had been waiting. Seeing Lin Yu, the beast bowed with respectful formality. "Greetings, young master." "Long time no see, Uncle Bao. I told you not to worry so much. See, I'm fine." Ghost Leopard shook his head. "I'm glad you're all right. If anything had happened, it would have been a great loss." Compared to the more straightforward demonic bear, Ghost Leopard was steadier in daily affairs. Lin Yu favored him for non-combat tasks, though in a fight, demonic bear was still relied upon, despite how badly things had gone for him in the original timeline. Strength aside, he'd been set up. Stepping into the room that felt both unfamiliar and fresh, Lin Yu's gaze flicked to the dungeon. "You didn't kill that rabbit in there, did you?" When he'd been at the Eastern Palace the day before, Lin Yu hadn't only indulged in romance. He'd also checked Qian Renxue's body and the progress of her spirit power cultivation. During the year he'd been away, her cultivation had noticeably slowed. She was now a rank 67 Spirit Emperor. For ordinary people, an 18-year-old at rank 68 would be miraculous, but for Qian Renxue, who already possessed a divine rank martial soul and the sublimated coxcomb phoenix sunflower, this was nothing extraordinary. She still had a smooth path ahead, at least until she reached titled Douluo. 2 more ranks, Lin Yu muttered to himself. Lucky I didn't use that item, or it would have been a problem. He'd long planned for Xiao Wu to become Qian Renxue's 7th spirit ring. The 7th ring is unique among spirit rings. No matter the beast's age or type, a 7th ring always grants a fixed true body skill. Its power still depends on the age of the spirit beast. A 100,000-year 7th ring is far superior to one from a few 10,000-year beast. After a quick look around, Lin Yu intended to go to the royal fighting team's training ground. As the team's captain, skipping duties for a year sat poorly with him. He bypassed the Tianhui, Tianji, and Tiando rank teaching halls and was about to reach the simulated training base when he ran into someone he'd rather not see. Chapter 120, Ye Lingling, Calculation? A girl of 12 or 13 stood there. Her long, dark blue hair fell over her shoulders, and her delicate face was as cold as ice. Even without a word, she gave off an air that warned others to keep their distance. She wore a simple black silk dress that, despite its modesty, did nothing to hide her graceful figure. Opposite her stood another young girl with dark hair, slightly older and equally pretty, Dugu Yan, whom Lin Yu knew well. Compared with the blue-haired girl's frostiness, Dugu Yan's expression always carried a trace of helplessness. Classmate Ye Lingling, I already told you, the captain isn't here, so what I say doesn't count. Besides, before he left, he told me he doesn't need a support-type spirit master. The blue-haired girl was Ye Lingling, the current young miss of the Ye family and the bearer of the 9-heart begonia spirit. Because of the peculiar power of the 9-heart begonia legacy and the limited reach of the 7-treasure glazed tile school, few outsiders truly understood them. Still, in Heaven Dew City, the imperial capital, the Yi family's existence was well known. They had built influence not by dominating the wilds like the 7-treasure glazed tile school, but through marriage alliances, the special uses of their support spirits, and a reputation for saving lives. The Yi family kept only one heir per generation, and when that heir was female, the husband usually married into the family, a custom the family guarded strictly. That was why Madame Ye had immediately suggested Lin Yu marry into their clan when she visited. Ancestral rules weren't something one could change on a whim. Dugu Yan's refusal left Ye Lingling at a loss for words. She was silent for a moment, then murmured, "Goodbye," and turned to leave. As she started to walk away, she unexpectedly collided with Lin Yu, who was just arriving. He blocked her path. She hesitated, about to step around him, when Dugu Yan called out behind them. "Xiao Yu, where have you been this past year? Do you even remember you're the captain of the royal fighting team?" Ye Lingling, suddenly in front of Lin Yu, looked up in a reflex and blurted, "You're Lin Yu?" Since his spirit evolved and he refined the origin of the 5 elements, Lin Yu, now having broken through to the Spirit King realm, could hear everything clearly. He recognized the cold girl before him as Ye Lingling, the pampered young miss who belonged to the original royal fighting team in the old timeline. He hadn't thought much of her before, but after Madame Ye had come to their door, he'd developed a certain dislike. He didn't know why Ye Lingling behaved as she did, but he was not one to interfere in other people's family matters. So he had ignored her from the start. Just as Lin Yu was about to apologize to Sister Yanzi, Ye Lingling unexpectedly grabbed his sleeve. He frowned, lowered his voice, and said, "Let go, or don't blame me for being rude." Her grip tightened for a moment. In a voice still chilly, Ye Lingling said, "My mother told me to apologize to you. She also said I should try to get along with you." For all her icy bearing, she was still a girl, and the admission made her cheeks flush faintly. Dugu Yan, who had originally intended to drag Lin Yu to the imperial restaurant and make him pay, now watched with an obvious glint of gossip in her eyes. Watching drama was human nature, even for someone who constantly strove to surpass Lin Yu. But Lin Yu was the man who could hold the young lord of Spirit Hall in his arms. He would never allow himself to be gossiped about. Besides, he had no interest in a girl as frosty as an iceberg. He jerked his sleeve free of Ye Lingling's hand and fixed her with a cold look. "No need. I already have someone in my heart. I can't afford to be associated with your Ye family." The atmosphere chilled. Dugu Yan didn't tease him further. She fell in beside him, and the two of them returned to the royal fighting team's simulated training base. Yi Lingling watched them go, then let out a silent sigh and made her way back to the Yi family. Recently, Spirit Hall and the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School had both been paying more and more attention to the Yi family, and their intentions were obvious. Spirit Hall wanted to recruit them outright. The Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School, however, had been applying enormous pressure on Madame Ye. They wanted the Ye family to merge into the school, with Madame Ye taking the position of Grand Elder. On the surface, that sounded harmless, but once the Ye family accepted it, they would be slowly devoured, and the Ning family would seize total control. Refusal was dangerous too. Ning Fengji, smiling yet ruthless, could at any time send experts to eliminate the Ye family if he chose. Ye Lingling's cold front toward Lin Yu had not been merely personal. She had intended to use him to get close to Shi Qinghe, the crown prince, so the empire might offer protection. She never expected that in a crowded capital, she, a young beauty, would be so spectacularly ignored. Having failed in her plan to use her looks to ensnare him, she could only return home with her hopes dampened. Back at the training base, Lin Yu finally assembled the royal fighting team. With a snow lotus provided by Lin Yu, a rare herb that could boost spirit power, several members of the team spent a year training and at last broke through to the Spirit Elder realm. Shimo, the Shi brothers, Oscar, Gei Xiang, and Shui Qingliu all advanced and each reached level 31. Dugu Yan had also broken through. At 16, she was now a level 45 spirit ancestor, still second only to Lin Yu within the team. After inspecting everyone's cultivation, Lin Yu decided to give them a lesson. One-on-one, he thrashed them all again, everyone except Dugu Yan. The five lay on the ground exhausted, while Lin Yu casually shook his hand and said in a flat tone, "Not bad. My effort wasn't wasted. There are still 6 years left. I believe that, no matter how stubborn you are, you'll be able to break through to Spirit Ancestor. Just don't drag me down." With the royal fighting team's levels checked, Lin Yu found himself with some free time before the Lantern Festival. He planned to make the most of it. After all the hard work he'd put in, success was finally within reach, and he wasn't about to give up now.